Welcome to Dark Hunt, where shadows come alive and every story leads you into the unknown. Don't forget to subscribe. Let the hunt begin. The Ghosts of the Midnight Tide. It started with a grand invitation. 5 strangers from different walks of life received gilded envelopes bearing their names and an irresistible offer: an exclusive, all-expenses-paid cruise aboard the Midnight Tide, a luxurious ship set to traverse the world's most mysterious seas. The recipients gathered at the port on a foggy evening, the massive ship looming in the mist like a phantom. Introductions were exchanged as they boarded. Vanessa Hart, a paranormal investigator with a reputation for chasing ghosts. David Lang, a washed-up novelist desperate for inspiration. Eloise Green, a marine biologist intrigued by the ship's route. Liam Oakes, a wealthy socialite eager for a new thrill. Zara Khalid, a tech genius who found the invitation's origin puzzling. The crew greeted them with polite smiles, their eyes shadowed and their faces gaunt. Captain Harrow, a tall man with a commanding presence, welcomed them aboard.
"You've been chosen for a voyage unlike any other,"
he said, his voice deep and grave.
"The Midnight Tide is more than a ship. It's an experience, one that will stay with you forever."
The passengers exchanged uneasy glances as the ship's horn sounded, a low, mournful wail that reverberated through the fog. The Midnight Tide was opulent, with gleaming chandeliers, rich mahogany furnishings, and corridors that seemed to stretch endlessly. Each passenger was given a lavish suite, and as the ship departed, they settled in for the night. Vanessa explored the lower decks, her recorder in hand.
"There's something off about this ship.
She murmured.
I can feel it."
Eloise, meanwhile, was drawn to the ocean. Standing on the balcony outside her room, she watched the dark waters churn below. A strange, bioluminescent glow trailed the ship, casting eerie patterns on the waves. In the grand dining hall, Liam and Zara struck up a conversation over cocktails.
"This place feels too perfect.
Zara said, eyeing the ornate decor.
Like it's trying to distract us from something.
Maybe that's the point.
Liam replied with a grin.
Who cares?
It's gorgeous. But David sat alone, nursing a glass of whiskey. He couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched. The next day, strange occurrences began. Zara's smartwatch malfunctioned, its screen flickering with distorted messages. Eloise's research equipment, a small water testing kit, went missing from her suite, only to reappear hours later, dripping wet. Vanessa recorded faint whispers on her equipment, though no one else was around. At dinner, Captain Harrow addressed the group.
"You've been selected for this voyage because of who you are. You seek truth, adventure, answers. The Midnight Tide provides all of that, and more."
His words left a chill in the air. Afterward, the passengers gathered in the lounge, sharing their unease.
"The crew doesn't feel real.
Vanessa said.
They're too quiet, too perfect. Like they're playing a part."
David nodded.
I tried talking to one of them. It's like they didn't even hear me.
Maybe this is some elaborate prank.
Liam suggested.
A luxury cruise with a haunted theme.
Then why can't I find the ship's registry online?
Zara countered.
It's like this ship doesn't exist.
The conversation was cut short by a loud crash. They rushed to the source of the noise. A shattered mirror in the hallway. Written on the glass, in dripping water, were the words, "Turn back." Determined to uncover the truth, the group decided to explore the ship together. Guided by Vanessa's instincts, they ventured into the lower decks, areas not shown on the ship's map. The air grew colder as they descended. The walls were damp, and the faint sound of dripping water echoed through the corridors. They discovered a room filled with old photographs and nautical charts. The photos depicted previous passengers, their faces blurred or scratched out.
This ship has been sailing for decades.
Vanessa said, scanning a faded ledger.
But these dates, they don't make sense. Some go back to the 1800s.
What happened to these people?
Eloise asked, her voice trembling. A sudden noise made them freeze. Footsteps approached from the shadows. The group turned to see a crew member, or what looked like one. His uniform was soaked, his skin pale and bloated, as if he'd been underwater for years.
"You shouldn't be here,"
he rasped, his voice echoing unnaturally. The lights flickered, and when they steadied, the figure was gone. The group returned to the upper decks, shaken. That night, Zara didn't return to her suite. The others searched the ship, calling her name, but she was nowhere to be found. In her room, they found her laptop open to a document. Her last typed words read, "The ship isn't moving. Look at the stars." Eloise checked the sky and gasped. The constellations were frozen, as if time itself had stopped.
She's right. We're not going anywhere.
That's impossible.
Liam said.
We've been sailing for days.
Or so we thought.
Vanessa said grimly.
This isn't a normal ship.
The group search led them to the engine room, a massive, steamy cavern filled with machinery that didn't resemble any modern technology. At its center was a strange glowing orb, pulsing like a heartbeat.
What is that?
David asked, shielding his eyes.
It's alive!
Vanessa whispered.
The ship. It's alive.
Before they could investigate further, the orb flared brightly, and the room was flooded with ghostly figures. They were passengers and crew from ages past, their faces etched with despair. One of them stepped forward, pointing at the group.
Free us.
She pleaded.
Break the cycle.
The group realized the orb was the key to the ship's curse. Destroying it might free the trapped souls and themselves. But the ship fought back. Hallways twisted, doors slammed, and ghostly crew members emerged to block their path. Liam was the first to fall, dragged into the shadows by phantom hands. The others pressed on, determined to reach the engine room. Eloise used her knowledge of marine systems to disable part of the machinery, weakening the ship's defenses. Vanessa and David reached the orb. Together, they smashed it with a fire extinguisher, its glow dimming with each strike. The ship shuddered violently, and the ghostly figures wailed, their forms dissolving into light. Vanessa, Eloise, and David watched as the ship sank beneath the waves, its last remnants swallowed by the sea. A haunting stillness settled over the water, broken only by the sound of the rescue boat drawing closer.
Do you think it's over?
Eloise asked, her voice trembling. David looked down at the notebook clutched in his hands, its pages filled with frantic notes about the ship.
I don't know, but I don't think I'll ever forget it.
The rescue crew, confused but kind, pulled them aboard. No one questioned where they had come from or why their clothes were soaked with salt water and blood. As the boat turned toward the distant shore, Vanessa stared at the horizon.
I think the souls are free now.
She said softly.
But the ship, it might come back. Curses don't just disappear.
David and Eloise exchanged uneasy glances, but said nothing. The midnight tide was gone, but its shadow lingered in their minds. Months later, Vanessa returned to her quiet home, her equipment untouched since the journey. She couldn't bring herself to revisit the recording she'd taken aboard the Midnight Tide. Eloise had left the sea entirely, retreating to a remote cabin, while David published a book about their experience. The book became a bestseller, though critics called it fiction masked as fact. One rainy evening, Vanessa found a package on her doorstep. Inside was an ornate, gilded envelope, just like the one she had received months before. Her breath caught as she opened it, revealing a single sentence: "The tide always returns." Far away, in the misty waters of the Atlantic, a faint, ghostly horn sounded in the night.